All right, guys, let's go ahead and get started. Doesn't look like we have a whole lot of people today, does it? So I am going to have an abbreviated class today anyway, because I am on my way to the beach. So I'm leaving as soon as I can get out of here. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna skip taking a break, if that's okay with everybody, and we can get out of here early. So I'm gonna do the normal lecture for the chapter, and I have an assignment that I want to go over with you, but my goal is to be out of here no later than 3:30, maybe even before that, okay? So we'll do the best we can. This is the chapter that starts the section on writing a business report. So it's also your, just one second, I got a message from a student who wanted to know where they were going to take a proctored test. So hold on one second. But just read the announcements. Okay. So the last, one of the last things you have to do for this class is to do a business report and a little presentation for me. So this is the section that starts discussing all of that. And the instructions are found in this week's materials for what you're going to do. So not quite ready for you to really jump in on it, but you do need to read the instructions. We've only got a couple more weeks to go, guys, so 2.5 weeks. So you can take a look at those instructions. And Thursday, I am going to be broadcasting from the beach. So after you've looked at the instructions, if you have any questions or anything, you can ask me Thursday, and we will schedule those during the last week class. So just here in this classroom, if the stuff doesn't work, go find somebody downstairs and they'll turn it off. Because I came in today and somebody had fiddled with everything, and the projector wouldn't come on, and the sound was coming out of the wrong place. And so somebody's playing with it during the interim when I'm not in here. So just go downstairs to the desk or around to technology, and they'll straighten things out for you. Okay. Probably when I zoom from the beach, probably make it a little shorter too, so since we only have one chapter to go. So, as long as y'all don't object me, if y'all want me to stay to the very last minute, I'll be glad to do that. But I'm still going to cover the same material. We're just not going to take up for it. Okay, so let me share my screen. I do have the recording on, so I've got that going. And show you Blackboard for this week. We are doing chapter 12 today, chapter 13 on Thursday. Both your homeworks are up there for those 2 chapters. And then the very last thing that you'll see is your business proposal assignment up there. So that's what I'd like for you to read between now and Thursday, and make sure if you have any questions that you ask them on Thursday. That'll give you we can have 2 weeks to get it all done. So even though it's a presentation, don't freak over it or anything. I'm not like, we're not talking 30 minutes or anything like that. We're talking more like 10-minute presentations. Okay? All right, so read through that before Thursday, and we will go ahead and take a look at the video for chapter 12 today, which is about the planning part of writing your business proposal.
Hi, I'm Pete Carson, author of the Today I'll talk about why planning and research for business reports matter, and I'll also issue you a challenge. Many business decisions require expert and reliable analysis. They should be based on thorough research. That's where we start on this chapter about business reports. Writing reports is a great opportunity for you to gain visibility with decision makers. After all, that's what reports are for, to aid in important business decisions. If you can gather reliable and sound information about issues of interest to decision makers, you may be viewed as the go-to person to handle an important. In the beginning of this chapter, we discuss various types of research. We describe primary research, which involves data that you gather firsthand, and secondary research, which involves data you get from other sources. We discuss asking the right questions to get information that best suits your needs. What you get here is an overview of business research. I strongly encourage you to find opportunities to develop and refine these skills. There's so much data out there that business professionals who can identify which data is useful, can analyze it, and can present it in a useful way are extremely valuable. In this chapter, we also discuss how to use tables, charts, and other graphics. When used well, these can make your reports and presentations much better. When used poorly, they can add clutter and confusion. The key is that these all should be designed to make your main points stand out. So here's my challenge for you. Get really involved with and informed in business issues. Read the Wall Street Journal each day. Regularly read periodicals such as Business Week or Fortune. Find some industry-specific publications that match your interests. Or find publications catered to professionals in your area, finance, accounting, marketing, or whatever area you're in. Follow companies of interest. As you do this regularly and strategically, you'll gain expertise in certain areas. So you might wonder, how does this relate to doing research? It gives you the depth of understanding to ask the right questions in the first place, to understand what best practices are, and to judge how useful the information you find is. So good luck researching issues of interest to you.
Okay, so a little intro about the reason why we would do a business report in the first place, and that is to help someone make decisions. And usually we are communicating to our management, CEOs, that sort of thing, and we're trying to somewhat persuade them. So it's a little bit like a persuasive message, except we're putting it in a report and we're backing it up with research that we have done. So let me get to our PowerPoint. No. No. Okay, so everybody got PowerPoints now? Yes?
Yes.
Okay, good.
No.
No? Oh dear. Okay, let's see. It flips back and forth without me doing a thing there. We got it, I think. Let's see here. Let me do another share screen.
Now we see it.
Good. Okie dokie. All right. So some of the things we're going to be looking at in this chapter, we're going to tie things back to credibility again. We'll talk about how to create research objectives, how we might actually design our research in the form of surveys, how we can use charts and tables to make our presentations more effective, evaluate the usefulness of our data. We'll talk about actually conducting secondary research, and we'll define that in a minute there. And then evaluating it for fairness and effectiveness, just like we do all of our other communications we have. So your chapter overview just pretty much covers those objectives there. Okay, so as we said in the very beginning, we do business reports to help decision makers make their decisions. So the first thing we really need to do is to identify what it is that the decision makers want to accomplish. So you need to spend some time before you even begin putting your report together, talking with your decision makers to consider what their goals are, what their objectives and expectations are. So just like we've done with all of our other types of communication, we always want to consider our audience first. Now, there are two types of research that can take place. Primary research is research that you collect yourself. Secondary research is research where you are using data that has been collected by other people. You have not actually directed that data to be collected. So I would say most of you all would be doing secondary research at this time, looking at what other people have collected, and then just analyzing that data. However, we are seeing more and more survey research taking place because we can administer surveys so much more easier than we used to be able to by using the computer now. You've probably heard of SurveyMonkey. That's one of the top survey generators that is used a lot. Usually there's some type of written questionnaire that has to be administered to a population of people. There's two types of questions you can ask on a survey. You can have closed questions, which restrict your respondents to certain answers. They either like rate something on a scale, or they have multiple choice answers. So they don't actually write anything down. They're just rating something or filling in a dot somewhere. Now that's as opposed to an open-ended question, which allows a respondent to answer in any way that they choose. So let's look at some bad examples and some better examples of creating research objective. You can see the difference fairly quickly just by looking at a couple of these. If your objective is to determine how satisfied your conference guests are, that's not very specific. So how do you measure satisfaction there? A more effective objective would be to determine guest satisfaction among conference attendees for key conference amenities and services. So it gives you a little bit more specific as to what you're really looking at to determine satisfaction for. They've done the same thing with green meetings, so you can read through that one. Okay. Now, surveys are useful because you can get a lot of responses. You can get them from your colleagues, from customers, or other groups of interest. What you want to do is to design your questions to be simple to answer. You don't want them to be you don't want the question to lead towards a certain answer. You do want them to be exhaustive and unambiguous. and you want them limited to a single idea. So what we mean by a non-leading question means that the question does not suggest that there is a right or wrong answer. Being exhaustive means that all the options are available there, and unambiguous means that only one choice is appropriate. In other words, you wouldn't mark more than one of the multiple choice answers. So we have a poorly designed questionnaire or survey and a more effective one. The less effective says on a scale from 1, not satisfied, to 4, extremely satisfied. How satisfied were you in the following areas related to your conference experience? And so on. It's just got 1, 2, 3, 4, not applicable. The question is really long. Most people would probably stop reading after the first couple of lines there. And we really don't define what, we say what 1 is and what 4 is, but we don't really say what 2 and 3 is, so it could be confusing. More effective layout would be to simplify the question. How satisfied were you with the following aspects of your conference experience? And then to show the scale for what each number actually means. So the question is much clearer. Formatting for the little scale is much better looking. Okay, here's another example of a less effective survey where you rank your guest services and amenities. Number 1 next to your favorite, 2 to the second favorite, and so on. Kind of complicated looking to answer this one. And then more effective just asks you to identify which of the guest services and amenities did you use during your stay. Again, we want our questions to be non-leading. We don't want them to appear to be a right or wrong answer there. Less effective to show my support for the green meeting movement. I would recommend the Prestigio as a good site for a business conference. And, you know, the way that is stated, it kind of suggests there is a correct answer. The second one is more effective, and that just says, I would recommend the Prestigio as a good site for a business conference. It doesn't say to show my support for the green meeting movement. That's the leading part of that strategy. Okay. Age, we've got some groupings of ages being less effective. Well, this one is not exhaustive, but you can see that the ages stop at age 64. Suppose somebody who's age 65 is answering this question. So there's not enough clarity there. Also, what if somebody's 50? Do they mark C or do they mark D? So just poorly designed questionnaire there where you can see the second one is a little bit clearer. So it's unambiguous. It's clear if you're 50, you mark C. And if you're over 65, you can mark E. Okay, and then we have a survey question that has really more than one main idea in it that's less effective and one that has just a single. How much do you know about green meetings and possible savings on these meetings? There's 2 things there, the meetings themselves and then the savings. The second one is how much do you know about green meeting options for your business? It's just one idea there. Okay, so that would be one way to collect data for your research, would be a survey. Another is just simply to find results from other research that has been done, and that's so wonderful these days. We have so many databases of information out there that we can access through the internet now, and we can analyze that data itself. So once you collect your data, you need to analyze it, and somewhere throughout your studies in business, you will start learning about some statistical analysis and forecasting and so on. You will also possibly learn how to use spreadsheets and databases and statistical software in some of your computer classes. You can rely on others in your analysis, but remember to stay focused on your business problem and look for the big picture. Don't get carried away off on a tangent with something that's really not your business problem, because there's so much out there. You might get led astray very easily. So you're going to be putting together a report that probably is going to have some statistics and figures that you have collected through your research. Be aware that people are not impressed by tons of data. They would rather see you make statements about what you have gained from the data, and then perhaps have some charts and graphs and that sort of things to back it up. So remember to use those charts and graphs to focus on your main message, which tends to be something that's not numerical. Lots and lots of numbers are not going to be easy for your executives and managers to understand. What they want is you to draw the conclusions from those numbers. Some of the easiest things to do are to create charts like line charts, pie charts, and bar charts. These are all just graphical type of displays. A line chart usually is used to show something over time. A pie chart shows the pieces of a whole, and a bar chart is often used to compare different things. So make sure when you do use charts and graphs that you are being very descriptive in your title. Your focal points are clear, you have sufficient information, fairly easy to process that information, and that after looking at those charts and graphs, you're able to take a message away from your presentation. So the title of the chart needs to explain the primary point, and it needs to be short enough for the reader to process it quickly. The focal point should support one main idea, and you can visually provide that in a lot of different ways. You can use different fonts, you can use bold, you can use different colors, so on throughout. Enough information in the chart for the reader to quickly understand the ideas that are being displayed, and we want that information to only be what's necessary and that you've labeled it appropriately so that it can be processed by the reader. Your takeaway message should be the essence of your chart and how all those other items combine to convey the final message there. Now, this little guide here you might want to refer to as you're doing your final project there. If you are using any charts in your or graphs in your presentation, there's some guidelines for formatting those. Making sure all your data is appropriately labeled. Don't get carried away with all the colors. darker colors should represent the most important items. Don't get carried away with your special effects. 3D charts are hard for people to process, so avoid those. Make sure all your text is horizontal. You don't want your reader to have to be turning the page sideways just to see what a particular line is, because the type is vertical. Avoid white type on dark backgrounds. Those don't copy very well. They aren't clear sometimes. You have to realize that not everybody can actually even read that type. There are people with visual problems that make it difficult for them to read white type on a dark background. Some information there about line, pie, and bar charts. I think you should probably take a look at those. If you are using something like Excel to generate some of these charts, most of these steps are followed by the software programs themselves. So you just have to check behind to make sure that you've input the data correctly to get the right results. But table 12.6 is in your textbook. It's going to give you those guidelines should you decide to use any of those types of charts in it. Okay, this is a table really hard to read. It's the result of a survey, and I just kind of went blind even looking at it, knowing what I'm looking at. Days of internet service, 0, 1, 2, 3, and then lots of information here about the gender, the income, and so on. Hard to read, less effective. It's just not clear. A more effective one not only presents the numbers, but places some percentages along with them. There's kind of a separation here between the different things that were being questioned and so on. And the information is just easier to process than it would be otherwise. Okay, so make sure when you're doing tables that you do order things appropriately, indent to set apart things. If you're comparing data, do that vertically. Make sure your columns and rows are labeled effectively, and use grid lines every so often just to break the chart up so that it's easier to read. All right. Quite frequently, the hardest step is to actually figure out what your research topic is going to be. I hate it when I'm ever given an assignment that says, do a research project on a topic of your choice. Okay, that just leaves the world wide open. You have to sit there and think about, what in the world am I going to do? Well, I didn't do that to you all. I gave you something specific to do for your assignment. But when you are, and you will be at some point told to just do a research paper or provide a research presentation, but they don't tell you what the topic is, try not to choose something too quickly, okay? Be strategic about it and consider what it is that you're trying to determine. So try to make your research more analytical and talk to other people. You will find that your colleagues and peers can often give you a lot of information. Now, your data that you collect, just because you find that data somewhere doesn't mean that it's official. Okay, your data needs to be reliable, relevant, adaptable. It needs to You need to evaluate the expertise and any biases. Okay? Reliable data relates to how dependable it is. Is it current? Is it representative? Relevant data relates to how well that applies to your business problem. Adaptable data relates to how well the research can be altered or revised to meet your specific problem. The expertise involves the skill and the background of the researchers that address that business problem, and a bias is a tendency to see issues from particular perspectives. Okay, you only see things your way or in certain lights or something of that sort. All right, again, this is some different research choices, sources of places you can go to get information, and how well they meet the reliability, relevance, adaptability, expertise, and bias. Okay, primary research is research you're doing on your own out there, no one else has done it, has a very high reliability and relevance, high adaptability, medium to high expert-based. There may be some pre-existing notions of the researcher. You have to watch out for that. White paper is usually done on a specific problem or project in a company. It can range in reliability and relevance. Low adaptability, you can't take that and apply it to other things usually. Medium to high expert bias, expert based, but the bias is sometimes geared towards whatever the organization's mission is. Industry publications are usually fairly good, maybe not so adaptable, but usually good places to pull some research data. And business publications, okay on reliability, but not so great on relevance and adaptability. Usually it's the mission of whatever that publication is, or the editors that will put some bias towards what they're trying to do. Scholarly journals, very reliable. May not be relevant or adaptable, but they are very high on expertise. Blogs, wikis, and websites, anywhere from low to high reliability, medium to high relevance, not very adaptable. Their expertise can vary, usually biased towards whatever the writer of the blog or the wiki, what their career objectives are. Business books are medium to high on reliability. They range a lot on relevance, low adaptability, medium to high on expertise, and usually they're biased to whatever the latest, greatest idea is. So if you want high reliability, go for the scholarly journals. But if you want something else, you may have to take a look at some of these other things. Again, a white paper is a report or guide that describes research, doesn't actually give you recommendations. It's more of a description. An industry publication caters to the interest of people in a particular industry, like maybe manufacturing or clothing manufacturing or fast food industry or something of that sort. Business periodicals, those are things like Newsweek and Time magazine and so on. They usually provide stories and information about contemporary business issues, not always packed with very much research, though. Scholarly journals do contain information that comes from scientific research processes. It's also been reviewed by experts in the field. So before it's even published, someone else has already looked at it and verified that it is following a clean research process and so on. External blogs, they're much less reliable. People are putting out blogs like crazy these days, so I would be very careful in using those. And then business and management books, they vary greatly in terms of overall usefulness. We're not necessarily talking about textbooks, but if you go like to a Barnes and Noble or something of that sort, you'll find a whole section just on business or management, and you can read lots and lots of books that are put out by so-called experts. Okay, more than likely you are probably aware of all the tools that your library has now above and beyond typical books, okay? Most everything can be found digitally. I wonder how much longer our libraries will really be in existence because we go and just find about everything online these days. There's also thousands of company and industry reports and scholarly journals. If you use any of these, there are links on the home pages for Southside or the library that give you different links to different databases and all kinds of resources. So just unbelievable the amounts of information that you can find. Wherever you get your information, you need to document it, okay? The documentation that you include helps those who are reading your report to determine its credibility. Okay, so always be good about providing your works cited or your bibliography with your reports. Again, evaluate your data quality. Now, just because you saw it doesn't mean that it's correct. And do more than just Google it. I love Google. I don't think there's a day that goes by that I don't Google something. But just Googling things is not going to always give you reliable, high quality data. So go to business and industry websites and do some other searches. Find online discussions and forums. Go beyond what your textbook says. Just keep looking and keep looking and keep looking. Persistency, usually if you find one thing that you're interested in, that will have a bibliography that you can search some of the things that has, and they'll tie into more and more things. So you want to keep looking. Just give up after one little search when you think you can't find it. Okay, you want to use that FAIR test, the test that we have used at the end of just about all of our different types of communication. We always want to look to see that the facts are there, they're relevant, and so on, that you can grant access to your data, the impacts of your data on others, and present with respect. So there's your FAIR test again. Facts, access, impacts, and respect. This shows you an example of a less fair and a more fair chart. Only part of the scale is given. You can see on this one it just goes from 4 to 4.4, which makes this one company look way better than the others. A more fair chart includes the entire scale, and you see that the differences are not that dramatic. So once again, your business reports are designed primarily to help decision makers come to conclusions. So your credibility is extremely important here. You want specific and achievable objectives. If you're using surveys, make sure you're designing your questions correctly. Your charts and tables can be wonderful tools to include, but make sure that they are done properly and not just overused. Your data sources need to be useful. Any secondary research, again, you need to evaluate that research to make sure it's reliable data as well. Okay. All right, so that's the PowerPoint presentation. Oops, we lost you guys. Let's see here. Something about PowerPoint. Whenever I use PowerPoint, that's when it reverts back. It's very strange. Okay. All right. So again, this is just the first of a few chapters we're going to look at for doing this last business report project. Just a reminder, this project is worth 25% of your grade. So keep that tucked away in the back of your mind as you're reviewing that. And you do want to make sure you look at that assignment before Thursday so that you can ask me all the questions you want to ask me. Last semester, I had a couple of people wait until the day before they were doing their presentation to ask me some questions, and they found out they were doing everything completely wrong. So read through those instructions and see what's not clear. I went back and made a couple of changes from last semester so that maybe they were a little bit clearer for you. We're going to take a look at one last video that kind of summarizes all this. And hopefully it kind of gives you an idea of where we're going with writing these business reports.
Business reports. You'll write a lot of them throughout your career in business, so it's probably worth you knowing what they're for, who they're for, and how to structure one. Okay, so what are business reports for?
To give your boss some information about a particular topic that you've been asked to research.
It's a public relation instrument.
Maybe companies and collective analysis of where the business is at and where it's going or what it could be.
Fundamentally, business reports are about communicating information, but perhaps more specifically, they provide information that can be acted upon. So you could say that business reports are a key part of the decision-making process of the business. So who are they for?
For the top managers, it could be for the supervisors, so first top manager first.
I learned in school for all the stakeholders.
For management, so we make decisions.
If reports are part of the decision-making process, then it's the decision-makers of a business who are the audience of a business report. A business report aims to answer a question, solve a problem, or address an issue within the business. So the report will look at all the information, analyse and evaluate it, and then make recommendations for action. For this reason, the structure of a business report is really important. So a business report will have the following overall structure: an executive summary, followed by the introduction, body and conclusion, and finally recommendations. Let's take a look at the structure in more detail. Okay, so first up, the executive summary.
So it's like a cover letter really for the whole thing. It's just going to give you really dot point exactly what what it's about, what the hopes are, what the findings are, where they've come from, and the general advice.
A specific but a brief outline of what's in the business report.
To make it really quick and easy for your bosses because they don't have much time.
A common misconception is that the executive summary is an expanded version of the intro. Actually, the executive summary is, wait for it, a summary for the executive, or a manager, or more specifically, for a decision maker in the business. So it could be a peer. It's for the business manager who may be rushing to catch a plane and needs to do a quick first pass over the report. So if you imagine the entire report, the executive summary is the entire report in condensed form. Another aspect of business reports that confuses people is the recommendations. Recommendations are sometimes treated like a rehashing of the conclusion, or as the opportunity for a personal opinion on the report. Far from being some final afterthought or last-minute concluding words, the recommendations are the very practical, actionable items for the entire report, really the most important part. They present the decision maker with what should be done next. This is a good time to mention that the tone of a business report should be formal. It shouldn't be colloquial or written in the first person. It's a logical, factual, free from emotion or opinion reporting of the facts. So this leaves the bit in the middle, the actual report. The body of the report follows a standard decision-making process. It states the problem, identifies the background or context to the issue, presents a review of information, an analysis and evaluation of that information, and finally a discussion around the findings. To illustrate this approach, let's take the example of buying your first car. The report introduction starts with a clear stating of the purpose. I need a car. The background. This is where you flesh out the problem and explain the context. So I now have a job and need a car to get there. It's a long trip. I only have 5K, but I care a lot about safety too. It's during the background that you will identify some of the criteria that will influence your analysis and evaluation. Next comes the search for information, also formerly known as a literature review. Reading car magazines, reviews online, and looking at car ads. You might source some information yourself too, like test driving a few cars. Next comes the most important step, the analysis and evaluation of the information that has been gathered. Often a theoretical framework is used as a tool to compare the different alternatives. Following the analysis and evaluation, the results are often formulated into a table like this one. It's comparing the different alternatives based on key criteria. Finally, a discussion is had on the findings, unpacking why one option would be better than another, with justification for any suggestions. Car A and Car B offer the best safety and reliability, but aren't within the price range. However, Car C is not too bad on both and within the price range. The report is then concluded and the recommendations are presented, the final clear and actionable items for the report. So you can see why this process is so important when the recommendations may involve spending a few $1 million. The process of arriving at the recommendations needs to be clearly and logically documented. So that's the business report. It's a logical and essential tool in the decision-making process for a business. Each section, from the executive summary through to the recommendations, has a specific purpose, and the structure reflects the specific approach that needs to be taken in arriving at the actionable recommendations of the report. Information in, analysis, evaluation, and actionable items. Well, all the best with writing your next business report.
Okay, I've already had one question about the assignment, whether you have to get dressed up or not. No, you do not. First of all, you'll be giving your presentation to me only, not to the entire class. Okay? If you would, I might ask you, how would you dress for this presentation? And you can describe that for me, but I'm not going to ask that you go out and get dressed up for just a 10-minute presentation. Okay? So we'll do some scheduling on when everybody's going to do the presentations. Towards they'll all be done that very last week of class. So if you're juggling for a specific time or something, you can probably email me and we can go ahead and get you on the list, but I'm not that formal about exactly when it needs to be done. It's done during our regular class time. So you can do that. Again, read through that and see what kind of questions you have. Of course, the video we just saw got a little bit more into what the report actually looks like, and that's the things that we'll be covering in the next couple of chapters. So that was just kind of a heads up as to the executive summary and the body and the conclusions, recommendations, and so on. So just a little brief, let you know this is what's going to be coming. Just to show you know, my dissertation for my doctorate followed the very same guidelines that you saw there. Of course, I'm not expecting you to produce a 200-page document on this one, okay? Much, much shorter. But it's still based on the same flow of information, the same types of research, and addressing your audience and trying to solve a business problem. So very much the same thing, except on a teeny tiny version of it. So just so that you'll know if you go on to any further education and get to that point, you can pull back upon your Business 236 class and find out that the same types of information are required for higher levels of learning as well. Okay. What kind of questions do you have so far? Okay, you know that by Thursday you're going to have read that homework assignment, and you will ask me anything you want, okay? Because I don't want you waiting until the last minute or finding out that you assumed something that you shouldn't have along the way. We have, I think, like 9 or 10 people all together in this section, so we have some little fine time to squeeze everybody's presentation in. I was amazed last semester. It was the first time I had actually given that assignment, and really, really good projects came out. So, and again, they were not more than 3 pages long. Okay, presentations were no more than 10 minutes. So we're not looking for wordiness or length. We're looking for substance. Okay, so making sure you're kind of following the strategies that we have there. Again, there's homework for this chapter and your normal multiple choice stuff that you've been doing. Homework for next chapter is already posted too. Don't forget, Thursday I will be coming from a remote location. So please, if you have technology problems, let someone know so that they can straighten things out for you. What kind of questions do you have? Everybody okay? Everybody happy? Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, we're way early. I hope you all enjoyed your getting out early today. Thank you. That's a badly needed vacation. And not from y'all. I have some other stuff going on in life that requires me to take some time off. So. All right, I'm gonna turn off the recording, and I will post this one as well if you need to see it.